She gave a warm meal to a shivering stranger with no shoes and eyes full of sadness, not knowing he once commanded hundreds. By sunrise, her quiet life would be turned upside down because of one unforgettable act of kindness. Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond, where ordinary hearts do extraordinary things. Settle in for a story that will stay with you long after it ends. It was nearly closing time at Hazel's Country Kitchen, a humble little diner nestled along a lonesome stretch of highway outside Asheville, North Carolina. The streetlights buzzed against the foggy glass, and the smell of rain crept through the cracks of the old windows. Claire Bennett, 41, stood behind the counter, drying her hands with a threadbare towel. Her brunette hair was pinned up in a hasty twist, and dark circles sat quietly beneath her tired eyes. She was a single mother, a fighter, and the last of a dying breed, someone who still believed in doing good, even when no one was looking. The bell above the door hadn't rung in over an hour, and she was just about to flip the closed sign when she caught a glimpse of someone, sitting near the side of the building. The figure was hunched over, drenched in rain, wearing a tattered army green coat that barely covered his bare feet. Claire hesitated. She looked back at the nearly empty till and sighed. "Ma, don't," her teenage daughter Lily had warned her many times. "You're too kind. People take advantage." But Claire didn't listen to warnings when her heart spoke louder. She opened the door, letting the warm air spill into the night. "Hey, sir? You all right out there?" The man barely moved, but turned his head slowly. His face was sunken, cheeks hollow, beard unkempt. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Just trying to stay dry, ma'am. Not looking for trouble." Claire stepped out under the awning. "You eaten?" He didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. "Come in," she said gently. "I've got just enough left for one more plate." The man hesitated. "I don't got a penny to my name." Claire smiled. "Didn't ask you for one." He shuffled in slowly, careful not to drip too much on the linoleum floor. He sat at the far booth, shivering under the flickering light. Claire brewed a fresh pot of coffee, then disappeared into the kitchen. 15 minutes later, she emerged with a steaming plate of meatloaf, roasted carrots, mashed potatoes with gravy, and a slice of cornbread. As she placed the plate in front of him, the man's hands trembled. "No one's fed me like this in years," he said, voice cracking. "I'm Claire," she said softly, pouring him coffee. The man looked up, eyes filled with unspoken memories. "Name's Walter. Walter Briggs. Used to wear medals on this chest. Now just wear holes in my socks." Claire sat across from him, arms folded. "What happened, Walter?" He took a slow sip. "War. 3 tours. Led good men. Buried too many. When I came home, I didn't recognize anything. Or anyone. Wife passed. Friends gone. The world just moved on without me." Claire swallowed hard. "I'm so sorry." "No need," he murmured. "You know, you're the first person to look me in the eye in months. To call me by my name. That's worth more than food." She blinked away tears. "Everyone deserves that much." Walter reached into his coat and pulled out something, a worn, folded patch. It had 3 gold stars and a faded insignia. "This was sewn into my uniform the day I took command of Bravo Battalion. 200 fine men. Best I ever knew." Claire traced it with her fingers. "You were their leader." "I still am," he whispered. "At least, in my heart." Then he pushed the patch into her palm. "Keep it. I won't be needing it where I'm going." Claire's brow furrowed. "Walter, don't talk like that." He smiled, but it was a smile soaked in finality. "You'll see what you did tomorrow. You did more than feed a hungry man. You reminded him he mattered." Before she could say more, Walter stood. "I'll sleep better tonight than I have in years." Claire ran to the door as he walked back into the misty night. "Where are you going?" "Wherever this road ends," he called back. "But I'll sleep proud tonight because of you." And then he was gone. She stood for a long while, holding the patch against her heart. She didn't understand the weight of that moment, not yet. But by dawn, the world would show her. The morning sunlight peeked cautiously through the blinds of Hazel's country kitchen, casting a warm glow on the checkered floor tiles and the familiar scent of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. Claire Bennett yawned as she flipped the open sign on the glass door, still holding the coffee mug she'd barely sipped from. Her daughter Lily sat in the corner booth, working on her school laptop, earbuds in. It was just another quiet Thursday, or so they thought. Until Claire looked out the window and dropped her mug. There, stretched from the edge of the diner entrance and winding down the sidewalk, was a line of soldiers. Hundreds of them. Camouflage uniforms, pressed and dignified, boots gleaming in the early sun. Trucks with military license plates idled at the curb. Some of the men and women stood at attention. Others looked around quietly, their expressions somber, reverent. Claire stepped outside slowly, heart racing. A man in formal army dress blues stood waiting for her near the front of the line. He had silver hair, deeply creased skin, and ribbons across his chest that shimmered in the light. He saluted crisply. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and measured. "Are you Claire Bennett?" She nodded, speechless. He softened. "I'm Colonel Mason Reed, U.S. Army, retired. I served under Major General Walter Briggs for 17 years. Claire's throat tightened. "Walter, the man who was here last night?" Mason nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Walter called me yesterday. First time in 4 years. Said he'd found an angel in a diner who reminded him of the man he used to be. Said she treated him not as a vagrant, but as a veteran. Said your kindness made him feel human again." Claire's eyes began to glisten. Is Walter okay?" Mason looked down. "He passed away in his sleep, at the shelter he walked to after leaving here. Peacefully. Quietly. With that same army patch you gave him clutched in his hand." Claire gasped, her knees weakening. Lily came to her side and steadied her. "He asked us for one last mission," Mason continued. "He said, find the woman who fed me when the world turned away. Tell her she reminded an old soldier what it meant to matter." Claire's hands covered her mouth. Her chest ached. "And so," Mason said gently, "we came." The line began to move. One by one, soldiers stepped forward, some young, some older, all bearing stories and hearts touched by Walter's leadership. Each one saluted Claire. Some left handwritten letters. Others pressed donation envelopes into her hand. A few simply embraced her, tears in their eyes. "Ma'am," a young soldier said, gripping her hand. "General Briggs saved my father's life during a deployment in Iraq. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here. Thank you for being there for him." "Claire," another added softly, "Walter saved me when I was about to give up on life. He always told us, character shines brightest when no one's watching. And that's exactly what you did." Soon, the small gravel parking lot was filled with people. Military families. Veterans. Even the mayor of the town, who had caught wind of the sudden gathering, appeared with news cameras and reporters in tow. Inside the diner, Lily watched in disbelief as the cash register overflowed with donations. People were ordering food, but refusing to take change. A local bakery delivered 10 boxes of fresh bread. An electrician offered to fix the flickering lights for free. And then, near the end of the line, a young man stepped forward in civilian clothes, holding a folded flag in both hands. "My name's Daniel Briggs," he said quietly. "Walter was my grandfather." Claire gasped again, hands flying to her chest. "I hadn't spoken to him in years," Daniel said, tears welling in his eyes. "But yesterday, he called me. Told me he'd met the kindest soul on earth. Told me he finally found peace. And that, you gave that to him." He handed Claire the flag. "He wanted you to have this. It was the one that draped his brother's coffin. He said it should be with someone who still fights for people, not with guns, but with goodness." Claire cradled the flag as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. And outside, under a cloudless sky, the soldiers began a silent march past the diner in honor of Walter Briggs, and the woman who made a forgotten hero feel remembered. The hum of conversation filled Hazel's country kitchen like never before. Claire stood at the back of the diner, flag in her hands, unsure whether she was dreaming or witnessing a miracle unfold. Everywhere she looked, there were uniforms, some crisp and newly issued, others worn with age and memory, filling every booth, standing shoulder to shoulder at the counter, even sitting cross-legged on the floor near the windows. The walls that once echoed with silence were now alive with laughter, stories, and purpose. "I need more coffee over here," someone called from a booth, raising an empty mug with a grin. "I'll take another plate of those meatloaf slices, ma'am, just like you made for the general," another added from across the room. Claire and Lily raced between tables, pouring drinks, clearing plates, scribbling orders. Volunteers had jumped in to help. A pair of soldiers manned the dishwasher, a veteran chef from Georgia showed up unannounced and took over the grill with military precision, and a young recruit insisted on fixing the leaky restroom pipe before eating a bite. Outside, cars lined the road, drawn by word of mouth, news reports, and something deeper, the pull of a story that reminded the world what dignity looked like. Colonel Mason Reed stood near the door, overseeing a growing pile of boxes marked supplies, Veterans Relief. Someone from a local foundation had already begun talks of turning Hazel's country kitchen into something more. By mid-afternoon, a group of soldiers returned from the hardware store and began reinforcing the building's porch. Others repainted the faded yellow exterior and planted flags in the window boxes. A quiet man in aviator sunglasses handed Claire a sealed envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "From the Bravo Battalion Legacy Fund." "It's not much," he said, almost shyly. "Just enough to pay off your mortgage, repair the kitchen, and maybe breathe a little." Claire's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a cashier's check, enough to erase years of financial strain. She looked up at the soldier, tears swimming in her eyes. I don't even know what to say." He smiled. "Then don't say anything. Just keep that table open, the one where you fed Walter. That's all we'd ask." And she did. From that day forward, Table 4, the corner booth by the window, remained reserved with a small brass plaque. "In memory of Major General Walter Briggs, Commander, Father, forgotten no more." People came from neighboring towns just to sit there, to order what he ate, to feel part of something honorable. Soon, Claire renamed the diner with a new sign carved by hand and gifted by the very soldiers she fed. "The Heroes Table, where every soul is seen." Every Thursday, veterans ate free. Every month, the diner hosted a story night where former servicemen and women shared their journeys over warm meals and soft lights. And every day, Claire placed a fresh cup of coffee at Table 4, always black, just how Walter had it even if no one sat there. Claire no longer worried about bills or broken fryers or winter storms. Because she had something stronger than profit margins or advertising. She had a battalion behind her. A family in uniform. A flag that meant more than decoration. And the quiet memory of a man who once walked into her diner with nothing but an empty stomach, and left behind an army of hearts. 2 years later, a soft breeze rustled the American flag that fluttered outside the Heroes Table, now a beautifully restored building standing proud along Highway 14. Beneath the canopy, a bronze statue of Major General Walter Briggs sat on a stone bench, not in uniform, but as Claire had last seen him. Hunched slightly, weathered, wearing that patched army green coat, a coffee cup in one hand and a peaceful look on his face. Visitors still came by the dozens. Some took pictures. Others just sat beside him in silence. But many, like young Corporal Jenna Fields, came with something heavier to lay down, stories of trauma, healing, hope. Claire sat inside, still behind the counter, apron dusted with flour, her eyes softer now but with a deeper strength behind them. Lily, now a college freshman, had returned home for spring break and was helping serve warm peach cobbler to an elderly couple, both Vietnam vets. The diner had changed in more ways than she could count. There was now a wall of service, stretching across one side, filled with black and white photographs, medals, letters from family members, even hand-drawn crayon notes from schoolchildren. On weekends, the Heroes Table offered job fairs, mental health sessions, and support circles for veterans transitioning into civilian life. And every Thursday morning, before opening hours, a quiet ritual unfolded, a roll call of names, fallen soldiers, forgotten heroes, spoken aloud by visitors who came to honor them. It all started with Walter. But it didn't end with him. That's what made the next event so special. That spring, Claire was invited to Washington, D.C., where she was honored during the National Women of Valor ceremony. On stage, in front of thousands, General Daniel Briggs, Walter's grandson, now in full military dress, stood beside her. 2 years ago, Daniel said, voice steady with emotion, my grandfather called me and said, son, I found redemption in a bowl of mashed potatoes and kindness in a woman's eyes. If you ever forget what leadership means, go see Claire Bennett. He turned to her with tears gleaming. Because of her, veterans across this country are being seen again. Heard again. Fed not just with food, but with humanity. The audience rose to their feet. Claire wiped a tear, barely able to speak. When she did, her voice cracked softly but carried to every corner of the auditorium. I fed one man because he was hungry. I never imagined he'd feed my soul in return. Walter gave me more than a story. He gave me purpose. And in his name, we now feed hope. The crowd erupted in applause. Back in Asheville, when Claire returned the following week, the diner was waiting, full as always. And taped to the window was a note written in a child's handwriting. My dad says you're the reason he smiles again. Thank you for saving him. Claire pressed the note to her chest, eyes brimming with emotion. And later that evening, after the last customer left and the lights dimmed low, Claire sat alone at table 4, placed a fresh black coffee in front of Walter's empty seat, and whispered, You still with me, soldier? The wind stirred the chimes outside, and for just a moment, the smell of rain and warm meatloaf filled the air like the night it all began. She smiled. Because some meals feed more than hunger. Some kindnesses ripple through history. And some legacies, like Walter's, never really die. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Storytelling and Beyond, where every story holds a heartbeat.